Blake Carter, a renowned and influential billionaire CEO of one of the most prestigious hotel chains in the United States, had spent the day immersed in high-stakes meetings and boardroom battles. That night, as New York's glittering skyline shone through his penthouse windows, he sought nothing more than a moment of solitude in his opulent suite. Every detail of the suite, from the gleaming marble floors to the tasteful artwork adorning the walls, spoke of success and meticulous order. Yet fate had a twist in store. Blake walked briskly down the corridor toward his private bathroom, expecting nothing more than the calming ritual of a hot shower. Instead, when he pushed open the grand door to his expansive bathroom, a space so lavish it resembled a small palace, he was confronted with an absurd and disarming sight. There, atop the gleaming white toilet lid, lay a young cleaning lady with long, flowing red hair. She slept peacefully, her head resting in an almost comical, yet strangely poignant posture. She was dressed in a traditional, easily recognizable maid uniform, a crisp white blouse with a classic collar, a modest black skirt falling neatly to her knees, and a carefully pressed apron tied at the waist. Although her attire was simple, it subtly accentuated her natural curves and hinted at an unexpected allure. The ambient light, filtering softly through ornate fixtures, created a dramatic interplay of shadows on the pristine marble, emphasizing the collision between high luxury and humble reality. For a long, breathless moment, Blake stood frozen at the doorway. His usually composed face betrayed shock, wonder, and an inexplicable pull. "What?" he murmured under his breath, his mind racing to process the surreal tableau before him. The woman's red hair cascaded around her delicate features, and even in sleep, there was a softness in her expression, a vulnerability that stirred long-forgotten emotions deep within him. Then, as if awakened by an unseen force, the cleaning lady stirred. Slowly, her eyes fluttered open, and a wave of shock and embarrassment washed over her. Her cheeks flushed a delicate pink as she instinctively lifted her hands to cover her mouth, her eyes widening in mortification as she realized where she was. In that split second, the intimate absurdity of the moment was complete. Here she was, caught in the act, in a setting that was meant to be private and exclusive. Blake's heart pounded not with anger, but with a gentle, almost compassionate curiosity. Rather than lashing out, he took a careful step forward and spoke in a low, soothing tone. "It's all right. Please, don't be alarmed." His voice, imbued with genuine concern, cut through the charged silence. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, hers filled with embarrassment, and his with a tender, almost protective warmth. In that fragile connection, the rigid boundaries of wealth and status seemed to blur, revealing the raw humanity beneath. Though the situation was undeniably awkward, the scene was charged with the promise of new beginnings, a collision of two very different worlds that could spark a transformation neither had expected. Blake hesitated only a moment longer before extending his hand in a quiet gesture of help. The cleaning lady, who would soon be known as Chloe Taylor, looked at him with a mixture of fear, confusion, and reluctant gratitude. Slowly, she accepted his gesture, rising unsteadily as the reality of the encounter sank in. In that opulent, softly lit bathroom, where luxury met vulnerability, Blake felt something stirring within him that he had long suppressed, a desire to reach out, to connect, to understand the woman before him. The encounter, absurd yet deeply human, marked the beginning of a journey that would soon challenge the very structure of his meticulously ordered life. In the moments after their first, startling encounter, Blake led Chloe out of the bathroom with a calm demeanor that belied the whirlwind of emotions inside him. They moved quietly through the corridor toward a secluded lounge within his suite, a space bathed in warm, ambient light and furnished with plush seating that invited quiet conversation. Blake, still in a state of gentle shock, couldn't help but steal glances at Chloe. Every detail of her appearance, the way her long red hair, now slightly tousled, framed a face that was both beautiful and vulnerable, captivated him. Once seated, Blake offered Chloe a cup of coffee. He poured the steaming brew into delicate porcelain cups, his every action measured and kind. "I know you've had a very long day," he said softly, his voice laced with genuine concern rather than authority. Chloe, her eyes still reflecting the raw embarrassment of having been caught in such an intimate moment, managed a timid smile as she accepted the coffee. "Thank you," she replied in a hushed tone, her voice carrying the fatigue of endless shifts and the sting of mortification. For several minutes, they sat in a quiet silence. The only sounds, the soft clink of cups, and the distant hum of the city beyond the suite's walls. Blake, breaking the stillness, spoke about the challenges of his day, and, in a surprising turn, confided that sometimes even those who seem to have everything feel unexpectedly alone. His tone was sincere and reflective, hinting at layers of complexity beneath his polished exterior. Chloe listened, her initial wariness giving way to a cautious openness. In his words, she detected a kindness that she rarely encountered in her daily grind. A world where she was often seen only as a background figure. As the conversation deepened, Blake carefully steered the topic toward recognizing potential where it was least expected. "I believe that every person has a unique strength," he said, his eyes searching hers. "Sometimes, the most genuine qualities are found in moments when we are least prepared." Chloe's gaze faltered as she considered his words, her mind replaying years of being overlooked and underestimated. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, a spark of hope ignited within her. Perhaps she was more than her uniform suggested. Their exchange was tender, yet tentative, a mixture of gentle probing and heartfelt revelation. Blake's careful, measured questions coaxed Chloe into sharing small details about her life. The endless shifts, the dreams she had long set aside, and the silent resilience that had carried her through the hardest days. In turn, he revealed glimpses of his own inner world, the pressures of running a vast enterprise, the loneliness hidden behind boardroom battles, and a longing for genuine connection that had always been at odds with his public persona. As the evening wore on, the tension of their first encounter gradually eased into something warmer and more human. Blake's compassionate approach and genuine interest in Chloe's story began to dissolve the boundaries of social status that had always kept their worlds apart. The opulent surroundings, once a symbol of his controlled empire, now felt like a backdrop for a raw and transformative moment of shared vulnerability. When the time came for them to part ways that night, there was a lingering pause at the door, an unspoken promise that this was not the end, but only the beginning of something unexpected and profound. Blake, with a soft smile and a look that spoke of both hope and determination, whispered, "Good night, Chloe. I hope we meet again soon." Chloe, still processing the whirlwind of emotions, could only nod in response as she melted back into the anonymity of her world, carrying with her the memory of a kindness that had set her heart aflame. In the days that followed their initial encounter, Blake found himself unable to shake the memory of Chloe. Even as he returned to the relentless rhythm of corporate life and high-powered meetings, his thoughts drifted to her, a presence that had disrupted the orderly cadence of his existence. Meanwhile, Chloe went about her daily routine at the hotel, scrubbing floors and tidying up guest rooms, yet every task felt imbued with a new sense of possibility. The brief connection she had experienced with Blake had awakened a dormant part of her soul, one that longed to be recognized for more than just her labor. Blake's internal conflict grew as he navigated his dual life. At the office, he maintained his reputation as a decisive, unyielding leader. Yet in quiet moments in his penthouse, he would replay their conversation, savoring the gentle honesty in Chloe's voice and the resilience in her eyes. He began to question the rigid boundaries of his world, a world defined by wealth, control, and a ceaseless drive for success. Could it be that the unexpected vulnerability he had witnessed in Chloe was a reminder that true strength often lies in embracing one's imperfections? Determined to explore this possibility, Blake decided to take a bold step. He arranged a private meeting with Chloe in his office. A sleek, modern space adorned with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. The room, typically reserved for high-level business discussions, was transformed that day by the prospect of something deeply personal. When Chloe arrived clad in her modest maid uniform, she appeared both anxious and hopeful. Blake greeted her with warmth and genuine curiosity. "Chloe," he began, "I've been thinking a great deal about our conversation that night. I believe you possess a rare talent, an ability to perceive details that most people overlook." His words, carefully chosen, were not meant to condescend, but to honor the subtle qualities that had captivated him. Chloe listened intently as Blake outlined an unexpected proposal: to join the hotel's culinary quality team as a consultant. The idea was radical, transforming someone who had always been seen as part of the background into an integral contributor to the hotel's dining experience. "I know it's unconventional," Blake continued, "but sometimes the most brilliant insights come from those who see the world differently." For Chloe, the proposal was both thrilling and terrifying. It promised a way out of the anonymity of her current life, yet it also thrust her into a world that she had never imagined being a part of. Their conversation was interspersed with moments of quiet reflection, as both weighed the risks and rewards of such a leap. Blake spoke passionately about innovation and the importance of embracing diverse perspectives, while Chloe's hesitant interjections revealed her deep-seated insecurities and the longing to be seen for who she truly was. In that room, amid the minimalist elegance of modern design and the soft glow of the afternoon sun, two disparate worlds began to merge. Blake's vision of a future enriched by genuine human connection clashed with the conventional expectations of his corporate sphere, and yet in that collision, there was the promise of transformation. By the end of the meeting, as Chloe left the office with a mix of hope and trepidation, Blake was left with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that taking this chance on Chloe was more than a professional gamble. It was a step toward redefining what success meant to him. For Chloe, the offer was a turning point, a chance to break free from the labels that had long confined her. And, as both of them returned to their separate lives that day, a silent promise lingered in the air, that the spark of their unexpected encounter could ignite a change that would forever alter the course of their destinies. As the days turned into weeks, the bold decision to integrate Chloe into the hotel's culinary quality team began to ripple through both the company and the personal lives of those involved. Within the corridors of the hotel, whispers and murmurs spread rapidly. Some admired Chloe's newfound role and the fresh perspective she brought, while others questioned the wisdom of elevating someone from a humble background into a position of influence. At board meetings and high-profile tastings, skeptical glances and hushed comments followed her every step. Blake, though proud of his decision, felt the sting of public scrutiny. The pressure to prove that his choice was justified began to mount, and he often found himself defending his unconventional approach to both colleagues and critics alike. At the same time, the success of the culinary initiative brought new challenges to Blake's personal life. His wife, Laura, who had long been a quiet, supportive presence, sensed that the changes in Blake were not confined to his professional world. Over dinner at their elegant home, Laura noticed the faraway look in his eyes, the subtle hesitations in his speech, and the emotional distance that had begun to widen between them. "Blake," she gently inquired one evening, "I feel like you're somewhere else. What's been troubling you lately?" Her voice was soft, but laced with concern, yet Blake's response was measured and evasive. an attempt to shield her from the emotional turmoil that had taken root within him. For Chloe, the transition was equally tumultuous. The acclaim she received at tasting events filled her with a cautious optimism, yet it also brought an acute awareness of her vulnerability. Every congratulatory nod and every word of praise was tempered by the memory of being underestimated for so long. In quiet moments after work, she wrestled with self-doubt, wondering if she truly belonged in this upscale environment. The hotel staff, who once saw her merely as a cleaning lady, now looked at her with a mix of admiration and envious skepticism. And while some colleagues extended kind words of encouragement, others whispered that her rise was an anomaly, a fluke that would eventually fade away. Amid this external pressure, Blake worked tirelessly to ensure that Chloe's talents were recognized on their own merits. He organized a private tasting event, inviting top chefs, discerning food critics, and influential members of the hotel management. In a sumptuous dining room filled with the gentle hum of conversation and the clink of fine china, Chloe was given the opportunity to evaluate a series of dishes with her characteristic precision. As she spoke about the balance of flavors, the subtle notes of acidity in the sauces, and the texture of the freshly baked bread, even the most hardened critics found themselves nodding in reluctant agreement. For a brief, shining moment, Chloe transcended the label of maid and emerged as a respected culinary consultant. Yet the victory was bittersweet. The public acknowledgement of her abilities only intensified the personal conflict within her. Every success was accompanied by a nagging fear that she might never truly belong in this world of opulence and refinement. Blake, too, found himself caught in the crossfire of his professional ambitions and the fragile state of his marriage with Laura. The more he invested in his vision of a transformed company, the more he felt the old wounds of loneliness and loss, memories of a past that still haunted him, resurface. One evening, after the tasting event, Blake and Chloe found themselves alone in a quiet corner of the hotel's lounge. The soft glow of the ambient lighting and the distant murmur of appreciative voices created a private bubble amidst the corporate chaos. Blake spoke earnestly. "Chloe, I know this path isn't easy, but I truly believe that you have a gift, a vision that can transform not only our food, but our entire approach to hospitality." His eyes shone with both determination and a tender vulnerability that belied his powerful public persona. Chloe, her voice trembling slightly, replied, "I never imagined I'd have a chance to be seen for who I truly am. Every day I feel invisible, but with you, I feel like maybe I matter." In that fleeting, intimate moment, the harsh judgments of the world seemed to fade, replaced by the promise of a future that was uncertain, yet filled with possibility. But even as these personal breakthroughs unfolded, the tension outside their private exchanges continued to build. Laura's quiet sorrow and the murmurs among the hotel's elite reminded Blake that the path to transformation was riddled with obstacles. The collision of high ambition and raw human emotion had set off a storm that threatened to upend everything he had worked for, both in the boardroom and at home. And as night descended on the bustling city, both Blake and Chloe were left to confront the realization that their journey was far from over. Their hearts, once guarded and compartmentalized, now beat in unison with the stirring promise of change. As the weeks passed, the strain of living between two disparate worlds began to take its toll. Blake Carter, though publicly triumphant in championing the innovative initiative that had propelled Chloe Taylor into the spotlight, found his private life fracturing. His wife, Laura, noticed the distance growing between them, a gap filled with unspoken questions and a lingering melancholy that Blake struggled to contain. At home, their conversations became terse, punctuated by moments of silence that spoke of unresolved pain and unhealed wounds. Laura's gentle inquiries about his well-being were met with evasive answers, and while she tried to remain supportive, the cold reality was that Blake's heart was being pulled in two opposite directions. On the corporate front, whispers grew louder. The hotel staff and board members debated the legitimacy of elevating someone from such humble beginnings, and the scandalous nature of the arrangement cast long shadows over Blake's impeccable reputation. Amid the boardroom discussions and hushed water cooler conversations, Blake felt the crushing weight of public scrutiny and internal conflict. He was acutely aware that every decision he made, now, risked not only his professional standing, but the fragile harmony of his personal relationships. Chloe, on her part, found herself caught in a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Her rapid ascent from a cleaning lady to a respected culinary consultant had earned her accolades, yet it also painted a target on her back. Every nod of approval from discerning food critics was accompanied by jealous glances and whispered doubts from those who could not reconcile her humble origins with her newfound status. In quiet moments after her shifts, Chloe wrestled with her own self-doubt. Am I truly meant for this world? She wondered, feeling both exhilarated by her success and terrified of the judgment that lurked around every corner. The tension reached a boiling point during a high-profile corporate luncheon hosted in the hotel's grand dining hall. As Blake mingled with industry titans and influential guests, he could not help but sense the murmurs and sideways glances that trailed behind him. In a moment of rare vulnerability, he excused himself and retreated to a quiet corner, where he received a private message from a trusted advisor warning him that his unconventional choices were beginning to undermine the company's image. The words stung, and Blake's heart sank as he realized that his internal battle was now waging out in the public arena. That very evening, after the event had ended and the grandeur of the banquet hall had given way to the hushed quiet of night, Blake found himself alone in his private study. Surrounded by mementos of a past that still haunted him, a faded photograph of his lost love, Sarah Anderson, and old letters that spoke of dreams once shared, he finally allowed himself to confront the painful truth. He was caught between the secure, predictable love of his wife, Laura, and the magnetic, raw vulnerability he felt toward Chloe. The duality tore at him, and for the first time, he wondered if he could ever reconcile these competing forces. In a moment of emotional clarity, Blake decided that he needed to be honest, with himself and with those closest to him. He arranged a private, heart-to-heart meeting with Laura, determined to bridge the growing chasm between them. In the quiet intimacy of their elegantly furnished living room, amid the soft glow of lamplight and the muted sound of a distant city, Blake spoke with an openness he had long suppressed. "Laura," he began, "I know I've been distant lately. There's a part of me that feels I'm chasing something from my past, a memory, a feeling that I can't quite let go of. I'm not trying to hurt you, but I need to understand what that means for us." Laura's eyes filled with tears as she listened, the pain of betrayal mingling with a cautious hope that their bond could be restored. Though the conversation was fraught with heartache, it marked the beginning of a painful yet necessary process of healing and honest self-reflection. Simultaneously, Blake reached out to Chloe to offer reassurance amid the swirling rumors and mounting pressures at work. In a quiet, private conversation held in a secluded corner of the hotel, he expressed his admiration for her talent and his belief that she was destined for greatness, an affirmation meant not only to bolster her confidence but also to cement the bond they had begun to forge. "You have a gift, Chloe," he said softly, his eyes earnest. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I believe in you, and I want you to know that your worth isn't defined by where you come from, but by the brilliance you bring to everything you do." Chloe, touched by his words yet burdened by the weight of her own insecurities, could only nod, knowing that the road ahead would be fraught with both challenges and the promise of transformation. As the night deepened and the city outside slumbered beneath a blanket of urban quiet, both Blake and Chloe felt the pressure of choices yet to be made. Their separate journeys, Blake's struggle to mend a fracturing marriage and assert his personal truth, and Chloe's battle to prove her worth in a world that had long underestimated her, had brought them to a critical crossroads. In that moment of raw, unfiltered emotion, they realized that the future was uncertain, and that the decisions they made now would shape the rest of their lives. And though the collision of their worlds had already set off a chain reaction of doubts, fears, and whispered promises, it also kindled the hope that perhaps, through honesty and perseverance, a new path could be forged, a path that honored the truth of who they were and what they aspired to be. In the wake of the emotional confrontations and the public pressures that had rattled both his professional empire and his personal life, Blake Carter found himself at a pivotal juncture. Determined to reclaim control and restore a sense of integrity, he embarked on a mission to rebuild not only his company, but also the trust that had been frayed by years of internal conflict and public scandal. With the echoes of whispered criticisms still lingering in the corridors of his hotel, Blake initiated a series of sweeping reforms. Senior executives were held accountable, and long overdue changes were implemented to foster transparency and celebrate genuine talent over rigid hierarchies. At the same time, the cracks in his personal life began to widen. His wife, Laura, though ever supportive, could no longer ignore the emotional distance that had grown between them. Their once comfortable routine was marred by strained silences and unspoken questions. One quiet evening, after a particularly difficult day at work, Laura and Blake sat together in their elegantly appointed living room. With trembling sincerity, Blake admitted, "I've been chasing ghosts, trying to find something that I thought I lost. But I see now that I've hurt you in the process." Laura's eyes, filled with both sorrow and tentative hope, met his as she whispered, "I want us to heal, Blake. I need you to be fully here, with me, with our life." Though the conversation was painful, it marked the beginning of a slow, deliberate process of reconciliation, a journey of healing that required both honesty and forgiveness. Parallel to these personal struggles, Chloe Taylor was carving out a new identity in the world of high-end culinary critique. Having proven her extraordinary palate at private tastings and corporate events, she began to gain respect, not only from skeptical chefs, but also from influential food critics who acknowledged her unique ability to perceive subtle nuances in flavor. Invitations to prestigious food events and international conferences poured in, and her unique ability to discern the subtlest nuances in flavor earned her accolades from renowned chefs and critics alike. Though the journey had been marred by skepticism and harsh whispers, Chloe's perseverance and undeniable talent turned every challenge into a stepping stone. She took pride in mentoring others, sharing her journey with those who, like her, had once felt invisible and underestimated. Each public appearance, each successful tasting session, reinforced the truth that her worth was defined by her inner brilliance and resilience. The defining moment of this new chapter came on a bright, crisp morning as the city awoke to a promise of renewal. Blake stood at the entrance of a newly renovated hotel restaurant, a project that symbolized not only a corporate rebirth, but also the personal transformation of a man who had learned to embrace vulnerability. Before a gathering of employees, partners, and media representatives, Blake addressed the crowd with a voice steady and resolute. "Today marks the dawn of a new legacy," he declared, "one built on honesty, integrity, and the belief that every person, regardless of their origins, has the power to redefine their destiny." His words resonated deeply with everyone present, sparking an outpouring of applause that seemed to wash away the shadows of the past. In the quiet aftermath of the ceremony, Blake and Chloe retreated to a private corner of the restaurant. The soft clinking of glasses and the gentle murmur of appreciative voices formed a comforting backdrop as they stood together. Blake's eyes, reflecting the journey he had endured, from the shock of an absurd encounter to the fierce determination to rebuild, met Chloe's with an unspoken promise of a shared future. "Chloe," he said quietly, "our journey has been anything but conventional. But I believe that together we can create a legacy defined not by where we came from, but by the truth of who we are and the dreams we choose to pursue." Chloe, her heart brimming with both pride and the quiet power of newfound self-worth, replied, "I've never felt so seen, so valued." Today, I step forward not just as a woman who was underestimated, but as someone who has discovered her own strength. I'm ready to build this future with you. Thus, as the first light of dawn painted the New York skyline in hues of gold and promise, Blake and Chloe embraced the challenges ahead with hearts unburdened by the past. Their intertwined destinies, once defined by rigid roles and unyielding expectations, had evolved into a testament to the transformative power of truth, love, and the courage to redefine oneself. In that radiant moment, the old world of power and pretense gave way to a new legacy, a legacy where authenticity, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of one's true potential shone brighter than any material wealth. Together, they stepped into the future, determined to create a life and a legacy that celebrated the best of what it meant to be truly human.